The 2023 NBA draft has been one of the most fun for me to evaluate, and I've had a ton of fun not only making these mock drafts, but videos about these prospects as well. This is the third edition of the monthly mock drafts, and the order has slightly changed, although I think the worst teams are beginning to separate themselves in the standings. I don't want to waste any more time, let's get into it. It's going to be this pick no matter what team's picking. Houston does have the number one pick in this mock draft, and they're getting Victor Wembanyama. There's no way they pass on him. There's no way any team that gets the number one pick passes on him. He's 7'4", maybe even taller than that, and does everything at least a level where you think he has potential, and most of his skills are just good already. He has guard-like movement skills, he has guard-like basketball skills, he's an elite prospect on both ends of the floor, and he's going to be a franchise savior for whatever team ends up with the first overall pick. I feel comfortable saying that Scoot is going to go number 2 in this draft. San Antonio has that pick. He would be the number 1 pick and pretty much the runaway number 1 pick in most years if it wasn't for Victor Wembanyama. He's freakishly athletic, his feel for the game is off the charts, his skill level is insane, he has all the tools to be a superstar guard in the NBA, and for as much as I love Trey Jones, I think Trey Jones is one of the bright young point guards in basketball, he isn't good enough to pass on a prospect like Scoot, because you don't get the opportunity to draft a prospect this good with the second overall pick in most years. And for the third straight mock draft, the top 3 remains the same. Amen Thompson has separated himself for me as the number 3 prospect in this class. The fit with Charlotte is a bit interesting because he's a tall point guard, and the only solidified piece on the Hornets as far as cornerstones go is also a tall point guard in LaMelo Ball. But I feel like the Hornets can't be picky or in a big BPA situation. Amen is a unique playmaker who utilizes athleticism in ways that make him one of the most complex passing playmakers ever. I made a whole video about it, check it out. He also would bring an element of defense the Hornets could use at the guard wing spot. I feel like I'm a bit higher on Jed Howard than most. I truly believe he's one of the 5 best players in this class, and is fit on every team in the league because of his skill set that allows him to excel in both on-ball and off-ball situations. On offense is valuable. He's a 6'8" wing that's lethal as a 3-point shooter, can play off-ball and hit movement shots, and has on-ball scoring skills as well as being a decent passer. For a team like the Pistons that have 2 guards like Ivy and Cade, getting a wing like this would be perfect. They just traded Saddiq Bey, and I think that Jed Howard would fit the mold that they wanted Saddiq Bey to be. And I honestly think that it's not just a Saddiq Bey replacement. I think he could be better than Saddiq Bey ever was. He has a lot of upside, and I do think that while, yes, he is a player that has a high floor, it doesn't mean he doesn't have a high ceiling either. It's a safe pick, but not a low ceiling pick, and it just makes too much sense for me to not make. I feel like I've had one of the Thompson twins going to Orlando in every mock draft, but Asar just fits perfectly with what I think Orlando is building. He's a freak athlete just like his twin brother. He is an elite defensive prospect as well, but unlike Amen, Asar is more of a connecting playmaker than a primary playmaker. He does have more shooting potential and more scoring potential than Amen, not by much, but still. And I think the connecting playmaking wing guard that can be a threat in transition works really well with Paolo and Franz. A potential Fultz, Asar, Franz, Paolo, Wendell Carter Jr. lineup could be deadly for years to come. Plus I think Asar J.I. defensive dynamic could be really interesting. The Pacers probably wouldn't be picking this high if Halliburton didn't get hurt. There is a correlation between when Halliburton plays and the record as well as when he doesn't play in the record. But they are picking at number 6 right now, and Cam Whitmore is the highest upside player on my board at this point, as well as my number 6 prospect, I believe. And I do think getting a wing forward like this could be interesting next to Halliburton. Whitmore is the best power athlete in the class, plus he has some legit shot creating and shooting upside. When you add his athleticism, plus his shot creating potential, on top of the fact he's one of the youngest players in the draft, you get something that could potentially be special, and having a playmaker like Halliburton to work off of could do wonders for Whitmore in his development. It's a good fit both short term and long term in my opinion. I know Brandon Miller is someone that's expected to go a lot higher than this. Most view him as a top 5 guy in the class. I'm not as high on the hype with Miller as far as this top 3 to 5 player in the class goes, but I still think he's one of the 10 best players in this class because of his baseline skill set. He has a ridiculous up profile and legitimately has an argument for best shooter in the class. He has some interesting passing classes as well, and he's a good defensive player. A 6'9" knockdown shooter with deep range, decent passing skills, and is a good defender who's worth a top 10 pick. But I have concerns about his ability to create offense for himself as far as creating separation, attacking off the dribble, slashing and finishing at the basket, which is why I can't quite have him in that top 3 to 5 range that most have him. However, his skill set will fit perfectly with his team. I know the Pelicans already have Trey Murphy, but you can never have too many players like that on the roster. Miller can contribute right away, and someone that I think would be a great long-term piece as well. It's killing 2 birds with 1 stone. He's going to be able to be an instant impact player and someone that can be a good long-term player. It's been a rough freshman season for Nick Smith Jr., but I still believe in his scoring upside, shooting potential, and secondary playmaking ability. The Raptors have a good track record of developing players, and Nick Smith is a player that I believe would benefit from that. The injuries have clearly slowed him down this season, and it's evident when you compare his tape in college to his tape before the NBA, or before college I should say. But I do think he's still worthy of going top 10 based off his skill set and fit on so many teams and the potential that he does have, and the Raptors would be a great landing spot for him. Washington is in a BPA situation, and Jarris Walker is BPA at this point in the draft for me. He's a high motor forward with great physicality. He's one of the best defensive players in the draft. He's one of the most NBA ready prospects in this draft. He has a decent feel as a passer in a complementary role, and he's flashed encouraging shooting / shot creating potential. His physicality, feel, motor, and defense give him a high floor, but I do think he has the upside to be more than just a solid player. Washington can't be picky with who they select, and landing Jarris Walker at 9 is really good value because I think he can go much higher than that. Like with Jarris Walker going 9, I think Keyonte George could go much higher than number 10 in this class. George has an argument for being the best shot creator in the class. He's a physical guard that can score on all 3 levels. He's an improving defender and a decent passer. And for Orlando, it will give them an element at the guard spot they don't really have outside of Cole Anthony, a real scoring threat. George will have an impact whether he's starting or coming off the bench, which I think really bodes well for his value. He's someone that doesn't have to start, but he still can come off the bench and give you 25 minutes per game if needed. And I think if Orlando walks away from this draft with Ausar Thompson and Keyonte George, that would be an absolute home run of a draft. The Portland Trail Blazers have always shown a willingness to take a swing on high upside prospects that are raw in the past, Anthony Simons and Shaedon Sharpe being the 2 biggest examples of it, and G.G. Jackson might be the biggest boomer bust prospect in the class. He has moments where you wonder what he's doing and he just looks lost, but he also has moments where he does things as a shot creator at 6'9" that just leave you in awe. He's the youngest player in the class and should still be in high school, which I think is something that should be factored into his evaluation. I do understand the risk of spending a lottery pick on a player that is a bit raw like this, but I also think when you combine his super high upside with the Blazers draft history, it would make sense for the Blazers to take a swing on him here. Max Strus to OKC might be my favorite pick in this mock draft as far as pick goes. OKC is picking a bit lower than expected because they've overachieved and spent pretty good this season relative to expectations. Lewis fits the 3-and-D mold of a Trey Murphy or a Devin Vassell type. He's a good shooter with on-ball creating upside, but fits better off the ball, and he's a good defender. That kind of player can play lineups with and without SGA. In my opinion, Lewis is the second most seamless player in the class fit-wise on all 30 teams in the NBA behind Zach Howard. He's the type of player every team could use and never have enough of. I have a top 10 grade on Cason Wallace, but he fell a bit in this mock draft because of the fit with other teams and certain other prospects is going ahead of him. He's the best defensive one-and-done guard prospect I've ever seen. His feel for the game as a defender is beyond his years, and he's a complementary offensive player. He's a safe prospect with a high floor. I believe he will impact winning basketball in the NBA in some form for a very long time. He can be a massive positive player without scoring, and that's because of his defense and his passing. Although I do think he is capable of scoring if needed, but I don't think he will ever be anything more than slightly above average on offense at best. He's just a good, solid player and a safe bet. Plus, I think he could go even higher than this. And with the 14th pick, the Utah Jazz are picking again, and they're taking Taylor Hendricks. They got this pick from the Minnesota Timberwolves in the Rudy Gobert trade. Hendricks is someone that's been flying up draft boards, and for good reason. He is a shot blocking monster with major stocks potential on defense. He's a good athlete that can run the floor. He's a good shooter with scoring upside. Like Wallace, he is a safe bet. He's a shot blocker with defensive upside to be more than just a shot blocker, and he can hit threes. Every team could use that, but I also think he has the upside to be even more than just a shot blocking spot up shooter. The Jazz just traded Vando and could use a power forward for the future, and Hendricks would be a good fit in my opinion. And that is the end of this mock draft. Let me know in the comment section below what you think. Do you think I missed out on a player? Do you have a player going too high? Do you have a player going too low? Love to do all of that in the comment section below. With that being said, have a nice day, and I'll see you guys in the next one.